Cool. So, welcome everyone to VDAO's monthly X Spaces. My name is Chris Miller. I'm the co-founder of VDAO, and we're really excited today to welcome Stenver, who's a CEO from Soldera, and we're going to look at dive into this topic of renewables and incentives in this space. So I guess just to kick things off, Stenver, I wonder if you'd be willing to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your why. What is it that brings you into this space and motivates you to build in crypto and renewables?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I'm Stenver like Denver, like is my nickname, right? So because it's easy to remember. And I've been in environmental assets my whole life. I've built multiple companies. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I raised more than 30 million venture throughout my life. One of the first bigger successful companies I did was called the Agronom, which was a leading climate tech solution in Central Eastern Europe. We built like a farm management software and region ag system, and we help farmers to become regenerative farmers. And yeah, that went really well until I essentially exited from it and bought out. In case you don't know, by the way, the 1 million hectares is 2.4 million acres. So and that went well, and then I bought out Solid World from inside the Agronom, which was built on the blockchain and was like a carbon credit trading platform. And it went okay. We were the fastest ones on our specific niche, focusing on forward carbon credit trading. We got like platform up and running. We had a couple of million running on the platform at its peak, which was a good beginning, but it wasn't enough, especially once the entire carbon credit market collapsed. And then we made the hard decision. We decided to pivot. So we shut down Solid World, and we analyzed through every single environmental asset there was. And what really caught our attention was EACs, also known as Energy Attribute Certificates. In US, they're known as RECs. In Europe, they're known as guarantees of origin. And we specifically liked how guarantees of origin worked for a couple of reasons. They were well structured, regulated, they had liquidity and so on. And there weren't any greenwashing issues. Like it's very simple to track and count, and you have like the government credibility backing it, which you didn't in carbon credits. So that was a really nice breath of fresh air for us. So we decided to go all in on that. There were just two of us left, and we quickly started building. And now it's been a bit more than a year. We're now 8 people and 200 AI agents, like we like to say. We have managed 3,000 power plants across Scandinavia and Baltics. First pilots in Spain, Netherlands, Belgium, and so on. And we want to be across Europe by the end of the year, and already looking outside of Europe as well, to Africa and Indian markets and so on. So yeah, effectively what we do is we completely automate the issuing, tracking, management, and sales of renewable energy. More specifically, the energy attribute certificates, or in North America, as they're known, is RECs. So that's a quick introduction about the journey. Didn't really tell me about why. Happy to share about that as well, but that's how it's gone so far.
Yeah, super cool. I guess before we go fully into Soldera and the renewable space, I'd like to just double click on Solid World for a minute, because I remember that being like it was a very big platform like a few years ago, right? And I'm just curious, what did you learn from that process of building that out, and what lessons do you take forward from that experience into this next project that you've built with Soldera?
Oof, where do I start, man? Oh, the lessons were many. the lessons were really like I mean, every company you build is always ripe with billion lessons. And I think what we did good in Solid World was that we were super focused on solving a specific problem. Like that was something I'd say we did wrong in my company before that, Diagonal. Like we were a bit too much all over the place. In Solid World, we were extremely focused, and that went well, and that enabled us to actually move quite fast, grow the liquidity and so on. And we built a pretty good reputation in the space. But what went wrong? Well, first of all, the timing was wrong, right? It's the carbon markets. Let's be honest, they need a lot of work on fundamental level. We were trying to build a liquidity platform for forwards where honestly the market is not even ready for liquid spot. Like we sort of all started believing that it will be, thanks to the Toucan and Climate DAO and everything that happened over there. And I think those guys, regardless of what happened in the end and how it's perceived by some, they were like bleeding edge innovators, and they did something super interesting and cool. And they sort of created this entire movement. Like it was extremely cool to see. So like we were trying to do this sorts of liquid trading, enable that for forwards as well, so people can like fund new carbon projects. But well, everybody when we came to the market believed that there's not enough high quality carbon credits. It was such a strong narrative that when we were like raising for a business and trying to get started, and like our investors were assessing our ability to deliver based on if we can find carbon credits. Well, it turned out that wasn't true. It's actually the opposite. It's still the buyer's market. Like it's carbon credit sales is a pure enterprise sale. So if we like skip a lot of lessons in the middle, then effectively what it came down to is that before trying to build a solution, just try it out manually from end to end. Like just do it, fake it that you have a solution, but do a deal for every step on the way. Just go through it manually, and you'll learn a lot and probably going to focus your attention better. The second was that we just had like too many counterparties. I mean, we had 3 different stakeholders we needed to worry about, and already 2 is known to be a lot, and 3 is really a lot. And while we took good care of 2 counterparties, the third counterparty, which was on the buyer side, we just ran out of funds before we could complete it. So we were like trying to grapple to difficult of a task with not deep enough pockets, I'd say. And so there wasn't like a good enough balance there. And honestly, I think we turned ship too slow as well. Like we could have, when the carbon market started crashing, we should have immediately began like validation if some of our core assumptions are true, and just radically make changes. And those are hard things to do, especially if you have good momentum going, which we did. But actually the signs were there, and we could have like realized it, I think, like significant amount of time earlier, what we could have done differently, and just changed direction faster, which would have left us more funds and capital and everything to decide if we're on the right path. But in the end, like we changed it fast enough, right? We got to Soldera. All the shareholders are still part of our group. They're very supportive and supporting us every step of the way. And yeah, so that's all good. I don't know. Final lesson when hiring in these bleeding edge industries, and when everybody's going around you is kind of going a bit losing their minds, especially in 2021 bull market, then I think it's extremely important to keep a level head and just remind yourself that behind everything there's normal people, and it's not as special as people try to make it claim to be. And you'll probably save a lot of money on mishires or some other mistakes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that insight you shared there. And also the bit about like, although there was big challenges in this space, like a lot of the projects that we're building were well intentioned, and they were experiments to try and solve some of the problems that exist within traditional markets, right? Like even without the crypto element, which brings its own kind of complexities, the carbon credit market outside of crypto is a bit of a mess, right? There's like a lot of corruption and a lot of issues in there, and I guess like crypto might have helped solve some of that, but also it maybe created new problems.
Yeah, I mean, but that's with every technology and everything that was ever invented ever, right? So it solves some problems, it creates new problems. The main the solutions that sort of persevere are solutions that solve more problems than they create ultimately. So I think what speaking of the problems that came out, especially when we look at climate and Hukan, I'm in the firm position that none of it was like, they managed to create incredible hype and they disrupted the core industry and so on. And then bunch of problems came out. Turned out they had very low quality credits there. Well, honestly, it wasn't their fault. Like it's the fault of the registry, like who's still selling those bad apples and then just trying to shift the blame to others. Like it's sort of like you have like this shopping center and there's rotten apples on the food stalls, and then you're basically somebody buys them and then you're pointing finger at them like, hey, you're why did you do that? Like, why did you buy my rotten apples? Like it's if anything, I'm like, this what happened should like completely and utterly discredit Vera, but for some reason it well, Vera has been discredited a lot, but it's still the main thing.
Yeah. So you guys have kind of pivoted fully into the renewable space, and I'm curious to hear more about that. Like, and also, I think you already touched on this a little bit, but like maybe you could just give a brief overview of what like guarantees of origin are and how they function in EU markets, and maybe just at a high level, if there's any similarities between this market and the carbon credit market.
Yeah, so at your home, when you decide between regular power and renewable power, from your power supplier, you may start thinking that if you pick this renewable package, then how do they get those green electrons to my house? Well, the answer is they don't, because if you take power from grid, it's like taking water from ocean. It's all mixed together. So there's always going to be some renewable, non-renewable, so on. But there are people and corporates who want to have renewable energy. This can happen for a variety of reasons. It could be because of tax breaks, subsidies, ESG, and so on, like compliance requirements or whatever, or just like sometimes also philanthropy. And if you then how do you solve that, right? How do you get actually this renewable power to these entities? Well, it's simple. Like, we built on top of the power markets, we built this guarantee of origin market in EU, direct market in US, or the more broadly as they're known is the EAC market globally. And it works very simple. It's like an extra layer on top of the power market. Those guys that control the grid, the big power poles in EU, they see exactly how much power was sold to the grid, right? I mean, they control it. And then on the other end, they see exactly how much was consumed from the grid. So they give out these guarantees of origin, or EACs, and 1 megawatt hour equals 1 EAC. So the renewable producers simply get these certificates. And then on the other end, the buyers need to find these certificates and use them, and they can use that in their audit reports. So it's essentially just like accounting, right? You see exactly 100 megawatt hours was sold to the grid, it was bought from the grid. Here's a certificate that proves that you own this one now. So it's extremely simple concept. It works very well. It's precise, and it's essentially just accounting. The reason that we got into this market is we noticed that 30% of the market is residual. This means that 30% of certificates are not being tracked. They're just renewable energy getting lost into the ocean, essentially. And if we got deep into it and started looking why, we understood it's because there's there's too much bureaucracy. Like if you're a small owner of a plant like rooftop solar or you have like a solar panels on your field or so on, if you're a farmer, then the amount of bureaucracy you need to do to get these certificates just doesn't really make sense. So you need to be like a big player to capitalize on that. But then we got into it. We took a wine bottle. We visited a few of our friends who have solar panels or panels on their fields, and we helped them sign up and register. We bought their certificates and we sold them. So like we literally saw how everything works, and we found out the weak spots, and then we just completely automated it. Everything, like it's literally few buttons. Using AI, you upload like some base contracts. It structures all the government contracts you need. You sign them, that's it. It becomes a passive income from there. It's like 5% extra revenue on top of your power revenue. And we just completely manage everything for you. We do the monthly reporting, we do the issuance, we say sales, contracting, invoicing, you name it. It's all done. It's just extra revenue. You get every month a notification how much money you'll now have waiting on our accounts. And yeah, in the background, we aggregate you together with all the other producers. This gives us volumes, and volumes gives us access to the best deals on the market. And that's how it started. But then we started getting bigger and bigger producers who approached us and were like, hey, we need something like this as well. And now we're focusing on like gigabit producers. I mean, we 1 month ago signed Nuven, who's like top 20 asset management firm in the world. They gave us all their like parks in one region and said they're gonna give us more. And so it's been like rapidly expanding since then. And it all comes down to the fact that we just really get the best results on the market, and we completely eliminate any fees they have or any costs they have in regards to the back office management. And that's only possible thanks to the AI technology, because we extensively use it inside our app to, I don't know if you knew, but power markets are extremely old school, surprisingly. So all the data is unstructured, and we just use AI to parse that unstructured data and make it into structured reports and data that the governments need. And yeah, that's the long story short. Been going well.
Very cool. It sounds like it's really like starting to take off there. I'm curious, like with the guarantees of origin, like is this an EU-wide market, or is it like SREX where each state has its own market and its own price? Like how does the pricing work? And briefly, second question, it would be is like is it actually linked to the electricity itself? So like that electricity that's represented in the certificate is actually it's electricity that's gone into the grid, and it's not being used by the person who has the solar.
Yeah, it's an EU-wide market, so you can like generate the certificates in Estonia and sell them to Germany and so on. There are some countries in EU which haven't joined AIB. AIB is like the regulatory body that regulates it across EU. Like Poland hasn't joined, for example, yet, but most of the EU countries are there. And globally there's also like systems for most of the world, and also the US has its own region-based system, so every region has its own owner. Unfortunately, I don't want to say too much because we've been so busy with the EU. We'll start working more on the other markets quite soon. But right now, I might misspeak something, so I won't get too much into the other markets. But fundamentally, they're all very similar. It's just there's a central authority that essentially manages these EICs. You need to report metering data to them, and they just give you certificates, and you need to find a buyer for them, and you can like cancel it for them, and they use it in audit reports. So yeah, you also asked what's the difference with carbon credits. Like there's massive difference. On the surface it may sound different, but going to the most fundamental thing, which is the biggest issue with carbon credits, is the carbon accounting. Like there's no accounting issues in RECs or GEOs or EACs. Like it's simple, like megawatt hour goes in, megawatt hour comes out. And that's really where it all begins. Like since it's so easy to count, and then the credibility is just there. There are some things, of course, that can be made better and improved, but comparatively to carbon, like these are extremely simple problems. And yeah, there's a couple of other, but I just stop here and emphasize that, like that's the number one biggest difference. The buyers are also different. They're government pushed often, because the demand, because it's regulated, and often like it's against the law to say you use renewable power without backing it with geos. So often subsidies and so on are tied to these certificates, and so it's not only voluntary ESG that drives it either.
Very cool. So if you're like you described, your friends have a farm or whatever, they've got like solar panels or a small kind of solar system there on their farm, and they're generating the electricity in that goes back into the grid, even if they're using some of it in their own residential supply, or they're meeting their own needs, but what is being recorded is how much generation is happening. And then a business that may have, I don't know, like a gas plant or something that wants to say that they're renewable, they can then purchase a certificate that says that X amount of solar energy has been produced. And then when they buy that certificate, they burn it, basically. Is that how it works in a nutshell? And also, like,
basically, yeah.
What would you say, like, at the moment, what's the EU market rate for like 1 megawatt, like one geo?
Yeah, you got it right in a nutshell. The prices are changing daily. It's quite volatile market. I mean, today specifically the prices are around above €1 a bit. So it's changing every day, and that's for 2025 power certificates. It's about €1, and the exact prices change every day. It was like 140 a week ago, and so on.
Cool. And it sounds like you had a lot of interest from like large scale solar plants. And would you say that this market is predominantly used by like big industry and mostly like large solar plants? And to what extent is it like voluntary? Like they have some ESG goals, they just want to go in there and meet some objectives for their ESG policy, and to what extent is it compulsory, like the government saying, hey, you're a super polluting company, you need to offset X amount of your emissions?
Yeah, it's not only solar. I mean, it's wind, hydro, biomass as well. So all of those are, and we actually will get into nuclear very soon as well. So all of those have their own EICs to track them. It's the split between ESG and government mandated goals like really depends from country to country. So It's hard to say, to be frank, but it's definitely driven by heavier industries and like these data centers and so on. So whoever needs, like corporate demand is one of the biggest ones. So it's the demand comes from, well, like I said, from country to country, either from ESG or state mandated subsidies or requirements.
Cool. And with on the corporate side, like, what do you think is driving that? Is that about? I think you briefly mentioned how like greenwashing could be a thing, and like, is that still a concern within these markets that this is how it's being used, similar to carbon credits, or is it more like, is it just about incentivizing and scaling renewables?
It's like I said, the greenwashing issues in EACs are extremely small because there's no carbon accounting issue. Like it's 1 megawatt hour in and 1 megawatt hour out. Like that's the biggest thing that we liked about it. We didn't need to worry about that anymore. There is a discussion on the granularity, like how granular should the geos be. Like maybe it should match the 15-minute power market as well. And we personally support that move. And throughout time, it's highly likely going to get more granular, all the way to potentially like 15 minutes. But we'll see how far it goes and how fast it goes. Since this is like a regulatory driven market, it can take years to change. But it's very, there's also the Norway issue. Norway is one of the big exceptions in the market where it sells away most of their certificates, but then they also tell companies that you can just use location-based accounting, like because we're such a green energy mix. Norway is like over 90% renewable. Then you can just claim that you're already green, and that's like a hotly debated topic in the space as well. But on the grand scheme of things, this is basically like coming from Nokia to iPhone. Like it's a pretty good solution, and it just needs to get better as it evolves, and that's pretty much it. Like when in carbon, we had a team that essentially did due diligence on every project, and that was like a massive discussion topic every week for us about project quality. In geos, it's just not a thing. Like we rarely talk about that stuff. It's more operational questions, and that's what we really like about that.
Cool. I wonder if you could share a little bit more about the solution you've built. And I guess from what you've described so far, it sounds like you're trying to help people cut through the bureaucracy of this system, because it's like regulatory, it's regulated, right? Like there's hoops you have to jump for it and stuff. And it sounds like what you've built is a very simple solution where if someone has, like, I don't know, a hydro plant or solar panels or whatever, they can just like tap into Soldera and it will complete that administrative process for them. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. And the ongoing maintenance, the sales, the contracting, finding counterparties, all of it is solved. So we provide like solutions to different sizes of producers, from anything from micro producers, like where they literally don't need to do anything, to like big, large scale utilities who have more control and get like consolidated overviews and sort of see exactly what's going on in their inventory, and also like PPAs and planned purchases and sales. So it is like an AI powered platform that does everything end to end. So you can everything from trying to sign up. Just we had one power producer who would have spent months just putting together the government forms to register their devices. Through us, it took them like less than a day, because it's just hundreds of devices and like near 1,000 documents were just completely automatically done for them. And on a similar way, when it comes to like micro producers, it will take hours for them to sign up if they will do it themselves. do this system and like start getting these certificates with us. It takes them less than a minute. And that's only the first part. The second part is finding the buyers and getting the best prices on the market. We are really successful in finding the best deals on the market. We have like significantly increased it's like from 10 to 300% increase in revenue, depending on what you used to do before. Like those are massive differences essentially. So it's finding those right buyers, doing the deals automatically, and really focusing on not trying to time the market, but like dollar cost average, just selling those certificates away, sort of every month do the tender, spread out the risk, and not be afraid that whether you hit the market on the right time or not.
Cool. And what role would you say that utilities play in this market, and also not just utilities themselves, but like grid operators?
Well, a pretty big one, right? Because they, when it comes to utilities, because they are one of the biggest power producers in every country, and on top of that, they also have a big amount of like renewable buyers. Like many big corporates and consumers go to them to source their power and also green power. So they're often the buyers, and they need to do the cancellations, and the most of the buyers who consume energy, they don't want to think about this stuff. They just want to choose their package, and they want it to work, and they want, if somebody comes checking them, then all the documentation is there. So the utilities are the ones that often do this final delivery, if that makes sense. Whereas the grid operators usually control this market. They see exactly how much was sold in and out, so they handle the certificates and hand out the certificates.
Interesting. And with the utility companies, like, what's your take on their, like, how aligned are they, in your view, with the idea of the grid becoming more distributed and more decentralized?
Well, they are naturally a consolidating force, so they are definitely not aligned on that. And in many places, they are actively trying to, hold back renewable energy producers from producing renewable, like creating new renewable powers. So, I mean, it's an energy market. Energy markets have always been very monopolistic in their nature, and they will prefer things not to change at all.
Yeah, and how would you say that plays out, like, in this market? You're saying that they kind of are actively kind of working against small scale producers. Like, what have you seen in the market that, in terms of like how utilities go about that?
It really depends from market to market. Like there's, they deal with the smaller actors because they need to deal with them. Usually they need to fill out some PPA agreements, or like they can have like a nice spread they could capture because they have some premium agreements in place, and like at the same time, like they're definitely not in a rush to make sure that it's easier to use their services. They are very political organization at their core, because they're often national run companies as well. So the interests over there are often different than like pure private companies you'd expect to have. And in some markets they also actively try to create barriers for new players to enter. So that's just how it's always been in the energy market. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And do you think platforms like yours are kind of going some way towards rebalancing those dynamics within the energy grid, and kind of empowering people to benefit from these incentives that are out there?
Well, absolutely, right? Because you wouldn't be able to even have access to the market if you're a small producer. So we absolutely empower all the small producers to even get access to the market and remove the administrative burden that otherwise would make it unsensible to participate at all. And at the same time, when it comes to utilities themselves, then they do have like usually the highest regulatory requirements in place, being utilities. And the EACs definitely aren't their number one priority. You know, their number one priority is make sure that the grid stays up and everybody has power, because if that goes out, then they're all over the news suddenly. So we sort of completely help them to remove and automate the secondary overhead from them, so they can focus on what they're doing the best, basically. So yeah, and like as these requirements increase and they need to become more granular in their reporting, and there's more and more like bureaucratic overhead, we've seen that they're actually very receptive in AI-driven automated solutions that just like completely remove these complex tasks from their table.
Very cool. So this seems like super aligned with one of the projects we're experimenting with within VDAO. I don't know if has Ben mentioned net positive to you before.
No, he hasn't. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so our take is very focused on the residential, like local energy producer, and we're really excited about the idea of microgrids and local microgrids, and even the potential for every building to become a microgrid. And in our platform, we're kind of seeking to sidestep the kind of regulated markets, but also create an alternative so that for local residential energy producers, their incentives can be stacked. So in our case, we're exploring a kilowatt hour reward for local energy producers. So for every kilowatt hour of energy they produce, they get a reward, and then they can build those up and redeem them for access to like exclusive goods and services from aligned brands. So we're trying to create an alternative where ESG kind of businesses that have ESG policies can connect directly with local energy producers. But what's really cool about Soldera is like potentially our users on our platform can also, if they live in the EU, they can tap into Soldera and also access the XREX market as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really exciting, and I think it's cool that you're like in there in that space, understanding like the intricacies of that market, and that take that you had there about like how it's not utilities primary focus. Maybe that presents a big opportunity for Soldera in there to like really kind of shake things up with a new way of doing things in that space.
Yeah, sounds perfect. Plus, you know, when we enter other markets, that's also sounds really cool. Like we could sort of cross-pollinate and expand upon each other, and potentially bring our solution to also, I don't know, US, for example.
Yeah, very cool. Cool. So I'm wondering if anyone in the space here has any questions for Stenver. Also, Ben, I know that you've been interested in SREX and guarantees of origin for a long time. So if there's anything you want to come in and share or kind of ask Stenver, please feel free. And also, Stenver, before we open things up, if there's anything else you want to add or anything else here at this point you want to share about Soldera or anything that we've talked about so far, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about VDAO and how big you guys are going, and like, you know, how many users you are, what states you're active in, and like just some high level overview of how far you are. Would love to learn more and see if makes sense to like explore deeper already, or wait for a better timing?
Sure. So with VDAO itself, our community is spread all over the world. I think we've got around about 650 people in our Discord community. And within our core contributor community, there's 75 people who've been through a kind of light interview one-to-one process to kind of get more directly involved in building VDAO. And out of those, there's around 25 people that are most active. And within VDAO itself, we've been focused a lot on resilience at a local level. Resilient water supplies, energy supplies, food supplies, and our community is kind of a peer-to-peer learning network focused on supporting people to become more resilient at a local level. But of course, energy is crucial, and energy resilience is a key part of a key focus within our community, and that's where the kind of ideas and development of Net Positive arose out of. And VDAO has been helping to test Net Positive, although Net Positive is a separate product from VDAO. The community has been actively involved in like testing it out. And I'd love to talk more with you about that. And we're just at the stage now of taking it out there and getting ideas and feedback on. I guess ultimately what we're trying to test right now is that we're really confident on the supply side that people will be interested to sign up and use it. But what we're really interested to test our assumptions is that businesses would be interested to connect directly with local solar energy producers. And that's really the stage we're at now, is starting to test out that assumption.
Mm-hmm. That sounds amazing, and it's mainly focused on micro producers, as I understand, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a cap of, like, on our emissions curve for rewards. If your system at the moment it's sitting at like 25 kilowatt hour, if your system is bigger than that, 25 kilowatts, then you no longer get one reward per kilowatt hour. So we really are incentivizing the smaller scale producers, and we could even bring that lower than 25. But there are some residential producers that have like big farms and stuff that they're still residential, they're producing for themselves, but they hit that 25 kilowatt system size.
Yeah, makes sense. That's cool. Yeah. Well, Soldera is basically perfect for these types of players, right? Because they can just join in. Could be like some collaboration with VDAO. If I get more knowledge about like your geographical spread, then they could sort of just immediately join VDAO and Soldera, and suddenly they start earning more without having to do much. So it only comes down to us just being established in that market and having set up our systems for that point. But yeah, it's definitely very exciting.
Very cool. Yeah, I think like the more incentives we can set up for local solar energy producers from our perspective is the better, because we've noticed that like there's a kind of trend globally for these incentives to be diminished somewhat, and it's kind of becoming more acute in the US. And in the last like 12 to 18 months for solar at a residential level, there's been a 30% drop in new installations, and we really want to shift that trend so that there's like as much focus put on residential solar as there is on building larger solar plants and stuff. That's our key objective, because yeah, we're interested in local energy resilience and security.
Yeah, makes total sense. Awesome. Well, would love to learn more about your priorities and where you're focusing now, and then see when's the right time to engage.
Sweet. Ben, did you have anything you wanted to add? Or any questions for Stenver?
I've got several questions for Stenver. I'm more familiar with like the EAC market in the US here. more commonly known as like the SREC market or REC market. I'm curious for the EU, are they similar to the US here, where certain states will have various RPS goals, where energy producers need to reach a certain percent of being renewable generated by a certain date? And is that having an impact on the way that they view smaller generators? Because I'm imagining that for those energy producers and utility companies, it's probably cheaper to deploy their own long term than it is to continuously buy like GEOs off the market to meet those goals, if there are such regulatory frameworks in place.
Yeah, but I mean, in EU it works very simply. Like, there's no like the requirements come from the fact that they just need to deliver the supply. It's a supply constrained market. There's ultimately less renewable going around than is required by the market, so everything gets bought up. So that's really why EU is so interesting and why we liked it. There's liquidity there. It was literally when we, once you have an established relationship with buyers, there's no like enterprise sales that you need to do. It's literally a couple of emails and you can have competitive tenders going on and so on. So that's really like a fundamental reason why we started with Geo specifically in Europe. So I don't know if that answered your question, but what it means is that these energy companies, they need to buy on the market to fill out their PPAs and so on, because they simply can't build enough renewable themselves in time. So they just go and source it on the market.
Yeah, so it sounds like in the EU, it's much more of a seller's market currently than it would be a buyer's market.
Yeah, I mean, it's depending on who you ask, right? It's can be either, so to say. But if you compare it to like some other assets like carbon credits, then it's definitely a seller's market. But within the geo market, of course, there's constantly shifting, whether it's now supply constrained or oversupplied, right? Depending on your position, basically. But those terms are always relative. But the fact is that the price has like just within the last few weeks went up like almost 50%. So that tells you there is more demand than supply on the market right now. And then at the same time, few years ago, it was like 10 times higher than it was right now. So that says that there's too much supply and not enough demand, right? So it's all like relative, like depending on the date you look at and depending on what's your position. But the fact is that you can find demand easily. The question is finding the best price. That's the hard part.
Do you think that the race towards AI, data centers, and all that stuff is going to have an impact on the space?
The risk reward of AI, or
just in general, like the power consumption, like, because every data center needs a huge amount of power, and as we enter into this race towards AGI, more and more, like I heard that Elon Musk's like imported a gas power plant to Texas or something that he bought to try and meet their power demand needs there. And I'm wondering if that's like, if you're seeing any impact of that already in Europe, or if you project that will start to feature in this space as that race hots up.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Data centers are big power consumers, and they all want to be renewable. And it's pretty clear that they drive a lot of demand, not only in EU but globally for the RECs in general. So, and at the same time, I'm a firm believer that our power demand must keep growing, not reducing. Like if we want to become green and like successful economies, you know, I'm an environmentalist, but I'm also, you know, I believe in humanity progressing, not regressing, and so we must become renewable and successful by also increasing our power consumption, because it's just the easiest and most established way to measure the advancement of a particular country or society, right? So this it's only natural that AI and probably other things like electrification of the industry and so on, like they will drive the demand of the power from the grid a lot in the future.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think that's part of our reasoning behind this push on the residential side, that like if we had residential microgrids, you know, we could get to a point of complete abundance of energy on a residential level. And I find that future potential really exciting. The idea of like abundance and energy being like readily available, it's like that's the key to growth. And if it's done in a way that's aligned with the natural ecosystems we all depend upon, then it could be really positive for humanity and the ecosystems as well, right? So yeah, I'm bullish on that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks a lot, Stenver, for joining us today. I'm fascinated by your product and excited to see to learn more about it. I think making these incentives easier to access for people is really crucial, and the way that you've done that with AI sounds really interesting and valuable, and it also sounds like you're kind of heading, or maybe already hit product market fit on the like demand side for these credits as well. So that's super exciting, and I'm excited to talk more with you about that and how we might be able to bring our net positive users into your ecosystem.
Definitely, absolutely. By the way, which countries in Europe currently do you have micro producers?
So at the moment, I think all of our users are in the US, but
Right.
I live in Munich, and
Got it.
we haven't pushed so far to we're like testing the platform, so we haven't pushed to onboard people. I would say most of our community is in North America, although there's a few people like I don't want to dox anyone here, but like Jerry and Sasha, we're all like in Germany. So there are people, and there's a couple of people from France and stuff as well. So our platform is going to be global. We're not going to restrict it geographically, but at first I would say we'll have more users in North America and Canada.
Makes sense. Well, I'd love to pilot your first European users in Germany or adjacent countries once you get them, and like as we start nearing going to US somewhere around end of the year or beginning next year, I'd love to discuss some with some of the US users if they're interested in piloting our solution there.
Great. Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It was great fun, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah. Cheers, Stenver. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.